E.N.D here. Today I'm going to give you a tutorial about the different phases in Magic the Gathering. Just to make it clear, this video is for beginners. If you already know how to play Magic the Gathering, probably you know all the phases in the game, but if you are a beginner, if you want to understand and know and learn more about Magic the Gathering, about the game that we'll have, this is a video perfectly for you. Here is a list of all the phases that there are in Magic the Gathering. We have the beginning phase, first main, combat, second main, and end phase. Let's see in detail every phase, every step, what you can do and what you cannot do. Let me zoom in. So, the beginning phase, this is the first step of the game. Untap, upkeep, and draw. So, if it's not the first turn, obviously this is, if it's not the first turn, if it's the first turn, you do only the draw. If it's not the first turn, that is the beginning phase. The first thing you should do is untap, upkeep, and draw. And what you can do during these two steps, during the untap, nothing can be played. At the upkeep, stack untap and upkeep effects, you can cast instants. At this stage, if there are some sort of effects that, for example, you at the beginning of your upkeep create a 1/1 goblin creature, at this stage you can play that particular effect. At this stage also you and your opponent can cast instants, not sorceries, only instants. But cards that have flash, creatures, any card that has flash, they can be treated as instant and therefore they can be played during the upkeep. During the draw, you also may cast instants and obviously your opponent can respond with another instant. This is the beginning phase. Now, after the beginning phase, there is the first main. During the first main, you can play E.N.D. You can cast any spell or sorcery, creature, enchantment, anything that you can cast. You can activate abilities and also can activate abilities of planeswalkers. And there are triggers at the beginning, effects from casting. This is the first main. Then, after the first main, there is the combat phase. The combat phase has multiple phases, you can see here. There's entering combat, declaring attackers, declaring blockers, first or double damage, regular combat damage, and end of combat. During each step of combat, obviously you can cast instants and also your opponent. There are activated abilities from when a creature attacks or at the beginning of your combat. And you have to remember that after each phase, the mana pool empty at the phase end. Therefore, if at the first main you had any mana in your mana pool, it will empty as soon as you go to combat. So let me do another. There's entering combat, declare the attacker, declare the blockers. There's first and double damage, so if it has double strike, it has first strike and then regular damage, and at end of combat. Once the combat ends, there is the second main phase. During the second main phase, you can do everything that you could have done during your main phase, the first phase. You can play E.N.D. unless you already played the land for your turn. You can cast any spell or sorcery, can activate abilities of planeswalkers, and also there is at end of enters the battlefield effects. Then once the second main phase ends, there is the end phase. At the end phase, you obviously clean up. During this phase, you can discard down to hand size. If you have 8 or more cards in your hand, you have to discard 1 card because the maximum hand size is 7, unless you have a card that tells you not to discard or that you can have any hand size. Remove damage from permanents, remove end of turn effects, and obviously non-instant or activated abilities. During the end step, you have to remember that once combat ends, if there are damages on creatures, those damages will remain on that creature until the turn ends, until the end of phase. Once the turn ends, the damages are removed from the permanent. If there are any effects, end of turn effects, obviously these are removed. And you have to remember also that during the end phase, you can also cast any instant, or even your opponent can respond with any instant card. These are the phases of Magic the Gathering. As I said, this is a video for beginners to understand all the phases of Magic the Gathering. Beginning phase, the first step, you have to understand there's untap, upkeep, draw. Untap, upkeep, draw. First main, you can play land, you can cast any spell or sorcery, and there you can do also activate any abilities of planeswalkers. There's combat phase that has 6 steps: entering combat, declaring attackers, declaring blockers, first double damage, regular combat damage, and then the end of combat. The second main phase, you can play another land. If you can play a land unless you played already one land. You can play any spell or sorcery, also can activate abilities. And then there is the end of phase, the end step, where you remove any combat damage and remove any end of turn effects. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something more about Magic the Gathering. This is a video for beginners. If you like this video, you can leave me a comment below. And here the subscription button, subscribe for my channel for more interesting videos about Magic the Gathering and the collectible world.